There are so many incredible moments in Marvel canon. But have I told you about the time that Thor defeated Ultron? Hello everybody and welcome to another installment of my infinitely long series where I play Marvel Champions, a living card game by Fantasy Flight Games, and prove that one of my favorite heroes, Thor, is capable of technically defeating every villain in the game. I wanted to start this series out by going right back to the core set and having Thor go against Rhino, Claw, and Ultron to prove that he has what it takes. What I didn't realize was that Claw was going to prove to be a problem child, thus resulting in this entire production taking a lot longer to complete than I expected. But if you're seeing this, that means that we have completed everything. It is time to put out the show, and you're probably already aware of that because this is the third installment in that series. Good move, Ryan. We are finally investigating who was behind funding Claw's exploits from the last encounter. None other than the android, Ultron. With multiple main schemes to work through, a gimmick that creates a lot of minions to play off of Thor's have at the ability, and quite a bit of experience under my belt, I went into this encounter thinking this was probably going to be the easiest of the core set encounters. I was able to take the deck skeleton that I got from Rhino and update it slightly with some of the cards that I have collected in the intervening time. The philosophy stays pretty much the same. Use under surveillance to delay the main scheme, have some allies to act as shields, and let Thor just be himself. The key difference is that threat delaying cards are going to be super important here, because each time that Ultron attacks, we will also have the choice between adding threat to the scheme or adding another drone to play, which will ultimately attack us in the same phase. My opening hand was Def Focus, Lightning Strike, Surveillance Team, Defender of the Nine Realms, and Under Surveillance. With how the Ultron scenario works, Defender of the Nine Realms is kind of a dead card here, so I choose to mulligan it away, drawing into another copy. At this point, I resolve all of Ultron's setup, and the top card of my deck enters play as a drone that schemes for 1, attacks for 1, and has 1 health. Again, my first action, as usual, is getting a copy of Mjolnir with my Worthy ability. After some deliberation, I use Defender of the Nine Realms as a resource to play Mjolnir. Then I discard Def Focus and Surveillance Team to play under Surveillance. Last thing, I attack Ultron for 3, putting him to 14. My draw is Genius, Multitasking, and Hammer Throw. This is a pretty strong start. Not only do I have a way of mitigating the threat on the main scheme for a little while, but I'm also already seeing a path to working through Ultron's drone army. Hammer Throw is immediately useful, as most of the overkill damage will carry over to the villain, but Lightning Strike is going to be useful in the event that I find myself overwhelmed by drones. After some deliberation, I take the attack from Ultron head on. Ultron damages me for 3. I choose to add 1 more threat to the main scheme, since Under Surveillance is already attached. Then take 1 more damage, leaving me at 10 hit points before the encounter card. Rage of Ultron, meaning that as I am in my hero form, Ultron will attack me, and for each damage inflicted, I will discard the top card of my deck. The attack gets 2 boost icons, meaning that I will still take 2 damage from the attack, and ultimately discard the top 2 cards off of my deck. Or so I thought. Because when I went back to do the editing for this episode, I realized that I never actually inflicted that damage. That's fine, because I can just edit my life total in the editing process, and as long as my life never dips below 2, then I never actually lost. This of course meant that I was going to need to review all of the game. This took many grueling seconds, painstakingly reviewing my life total, and yeah. Look at that! Thank you, buddy. Yeah, this is not a valid encounter, so we're going to do it one more time, I hope. Alright, so after a few failed attempts, I was running into a bit of a wall and could not overcome Ultron, mainly due to being overwhelmed by drones. That's when I took a step back and asked myself what I needed the most: more copies of Lightning Strike. And for the purposes of this particular scenario, Beat 'em Up and a copy of Energy is ostensibly the same as Lightning Strike when it comes to clearing the board. I made quite a few attempts against Ultron, but it's hard to say how my win-loss record compared against Rhino or Claw, because the downfall of several attempts all came down to consistently being overwhelmed by attacks, mainly in the form of Rage of Ultron. This completely forgettable treachery did me in back-to-back games, and then in the next game I was did in by back-to-back assaults. At this point I had tried multiple attempts to try to make a Thor Justice deck work against the scenario, and nothing was working. The most demoralizing attempt was when I had the villain in stage 2 down to 13 life and just got completely overwhelmed by a bunch of minions. The threat threshold on Ultron's main schemes are low enough that I began to realize that I was probably overcommitting resources, removing less threat than the cards even said on their printed text. And because I could not be certain which attempts would yield a victory, I recorded all of my playtest games, trying to weed out dead cards or any interactions I may want to prioritize during mulligans. As we finally sit down for a serious attempt at Ultron, my opening hand is Quinn Carrier, Lady Sif, Defender of the Nine Realms, Power of Aggression, and Combat Training. I elect to mulligan away Quinn Carrier, Lady Sif, and Defender of the Nine Realms, drawing into Lightning Strike, Beat 'em Up, and Hammer Throw. As part of the setup, the top card of my deck becomes a drone with one scheme and one attack. This means there will be plenty of minions entering play every turn, which allows Thor to shine. But valuable cards could be turned into drones, and the only way for me to get use of them is to defeat the minion, run through my entire deck, and shuffle them back in. So the first thing I do to start out my turn is search for Mjolnir. Then I use Power of Aggression to play Combat Training, and Hammer Throw to play Mjolnir. I change into my hero form and attack Ultron for 4. Then play Bring It to draw into Defender of the Nine Realms. After some consideration, I choose to discard my entire hand to draw into 4 new cards: Jane Foster Thor, Defender of the Nine Realms, Precision Strike, and Energy. I take an undefended attack for 4 and elect to place another drone into play off of Ultron's trigger. Just as a reminder for anyone who hasn't played Ultron in a while or doesn't play Standard, in Stage 1, Ultron's forced response is that after he attacks you, you either put one threat on the main scheme or you elect to put a drone minion into play engaged with you. While I take 2 more damage, I also get to draw 2 more cards, Pitchback and Sunspot. On my turn, I use Sunspot, Energy, and Defender of the Nine Realms to play Jane Foster Thor, firing off 3 more damage at Ultron, bringing them down to 10 hit points. I pay for Precision Strike with Pitchback, healing 2 damage after defeating a drone. I attack with Thor, defeating the other drone. And I ready back up and draw into another copy of Pitchback, Spider-Girl, Bring It, and Endurance. We're in a good position here, so I feel safe taking another undefended attack, this time only for 2, bringing me down to 8 hit points. Again, I elect to get a drone, drawing into Angela and Hammer Throw. Finally, my encounter card is Concussion Blasters. On my turn, I decide to thwart the main scheme with Jane and play out Endurance, discarding Angela. Then I attack Ultron with Thor, bringing them down to 6 hit points. This does drop me down to 10 due to Retaliate. Then I play Pitchback, bringing the villain down to 2 hit points and take another retaliation damage. I ready back up and draw Asgard and Power of Aggression. I decide to defend against the villain's attack this time, taking 1 damage. Then another drone gets put into play, and I draw into God of Thunder and Lightning Strike. Then I take the drone attacks, going down to 5. My encounter card is Advance, completing the first main scheme. A 3rd drone is created, and I move into the player phase. I play out Spider-Girl, then discard the rest of my hand to play Lightning Strike for 2, wiping the table and sending Ultron to Stage 2. The distinction this time is that Stage 2 of Ultron has a forced interrupt that when he attacks you, you put the top card of your deck into play face down engaged with you as a drone minion. Then, until the end of that attack, Ultron gets +1 for each drone minion engaged with you. It is entirely possible that we could be taking a lot of damage each attack. Spoilers for Juggernaut. I decide to keep both my allies back due to retaliate and change into my alter ego form. Then I draw into Precision Strike, Hall of Heroes, for Asgard, Thor's helmet, and into the fray. After placing threat on the main scheme, I choose to get another drone, and my encounter card is my obligation, Odin's Anger. I choose to exhaust Odin's Son and progress to the player phase. On my turn, I change to my hero form, play Hall of Heroes, and Precision Strike away the drone to gain 2 life back. Then my allies thwart the main scheme, and I ready up, drawing Limitless Stamina, Downtime, Genius, and Bring It. That empties my deck, resulting in me shuffling up and getting a face-down encounter card. I create another drone off the main scheme, drawing 4 Asgard and pitch back. My encounter cards are Drone Factory, creating another drone, and Repair Sequence, which surges into Concussive Blast. This takes my allies away and puts me down to 4 hit points. I have to make a lot of decisions on my turn, but I start by playing Bring It to give me more options, drawing into Precision Strike and pitch back. At this point, I start to think through everything very carefully because I might have the win all queued up. I know that my 4 attack plus a Limitless Stamina is going to cover a lot of ground here. Plus, I have 2 pitchbacks, but I do need to be mindful of retaliate. After some thought, I attack for 4 and play pitchback against one of the drones. Then I Precision Strike the other drone, gaining 2 life and getting Hall of Heroes up to 3 counters. I ready up with Limitless Stamina, attack for 4 more, and change to my alter ego to draw up a new hand of Sunfire, Defender of the Nine Realms, Limitless Stamina, and God of Thunder. Ultron ultimately schemes for 5, bringing the total threat to 8 of 10. Then I remember the forgotten forced response on the main scheme, creating a drone and accruing 1 more threat. My encounter card is Shadows of the Past, something I totally don't need right now. At this point, I need to put all my stock into the 3 extra cards from Hall of Heroes. So on my turn, I draw into Pitchback, Bring It, and Asgard. Ultron is at 14 hit points, and I know that I need to consider every option, including if I can afford to use an exhaust on recovering health. Unfortunately, some of those answers are dependent on what Bring It draws. After some thought, I change to hero form. Use Bring It to draw 2 additional cards, Lightning Strike and Thor's Helmet. Okay, I really think I can envision a victory, but I'm really afraid that I'm overlooking something. Yes, I am aware of all the things I did miss. In fact, I'm about to play Sunfire and just pretend that I saved God of Thunder to pay for his kicker. It's a complicated game with a lot going on. I play out Sunfire, removing Concussion Blasters. Then I attack for 4, ready back up with Limitless Stamina, and attack for 4 more, bringing Ultron down to 6. Then 2 pitchbacks is all I need to close out the game, defeating Ultron. And in this alternate world, where I actually don't have the resources to play pitchback, Sunfire just attacks for 2. What can we take from this whole experience? There's probably things I missed, even in accepting this particular victory as a victory. But what I will say is that I think that the core set villains are really great for learning the game. And Ultron is especially great at that because he throws these forced responses and forced interrupts at you that can really compromise the decisions you need to make. Honestly, I thought that this was going to be a cakewalk for Thor, and in so many ways, because I was counting some of my playtest games, I actually think that Thor did better against Ultron than he did the previous 2 villains. That doesn't really matter because I still have like 10 games that I recorded. Overall, I am ready to get outside of the core set, to move on to bigger and better things, and like I think I said somewhere else, not necessarily move in chronological order. But I am so happy to be done with the core set in the sense that we have played through everything, we've reached this goal, and we can definitively say that Thor can defeat every villain in the core box. I think that was a given. I think we all know he could, but bigger things are coming. I would like to just thank everybody who's already watched all my previous videos, as it's a labor of love, and the biggest problem that I have presently is just finding the time to sit down and make these particular recordings. The editing part takes as long as it does, but I love it. It's just finding time to have a quiet house and the energy to do it. But until next time, I thank you all for sitting down and watching this, because you didn't have to, and I will get to the Rise of Red Skull and Green Goblin in short order, but I think I want to move on to one of the X-Men villains. I just don't know which yet, but I'll see you then.